Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
The sun was already dipping low, casting the fields in a dusty golden haze as I packed up my little roadside stand. I counted out my coins, $27 in all. It wasn't much, but with careful planning, it'd get me through the week. The wind kicked up, and I hurried to secure my last jar of cottage cheese, grumbling to myself about the storm brewing on the horizon. Just as I was about to leave, I noticed a small figure trudging along the road, his head down. The boy looked out of place, clothes too small, face smudged with dirt. He stopped a few feet away, casting a wary glance at me. "Are you lost? What's your name?" I called, trying to sound gentle. He looked at me, wide-eyed before nodding. "My name is Omar. I was supposed to meet my dad here, but he didn't come," he muttered, staring at his shoes. I could hear the tremor in his voice, a crack that hinted at more than just a missed appointment. "Where's he coming from?" I asked, crouching down so I was eye level with him. He said he'd be here. But I think something happened. I tried to call, but I don't have enough money to get a ride home. He sniffed, hastily rubbing at his eyes. Maybe he forgotten. That word hit me hard, stirring memories I'd buried long ago. I wanted to turn away, but something in his face, the helplessness, the lost look, kept me rooted there. Without thinking, I dug into my pocket, feeling the edges of the crumpled bills. It was all I had, yet in that moment, it felt like he needed it more. "Look, this should be enough to get you home," I said, pressing the money into his hand. He shook his head, trying to give it back. "I can't take this. You don't know me." "Maybe I don't," I said, smiling softly. "But no one should be left stranded alone. You'll need this more than I do tonight." He looked down at the bills in his hand, his lip quivering. "Thank you. I won't forget this." "I promise," he whispered. "Just get home safe, all right?" I replied, giving his shoulder a reassuring squeeze. I watched him hurry down the road, casting glances back at me until he disappeared around the bend. A strange ache settled in my chest as he left, a mix of worry and satisfaction. The sun dipped fully behind the hills, leaving me in shadow. But for the first time in a long time, I felt as though I'd done something that mattered. That $27 was gone, but somehow my heart felt fuller than ever. Morning fog rolled over the fields as I stepped outside, pulling my worn jacket tighter against the chill. The old farmhouse creaked in the wind, shingles barely hanging on, and a broken window clattered loosely in the breeze. I'd meant to fix it, but money was tight, as always. Across the field, I spotted Lennon Brown barking orders at the other workers. He stood like a king over his shabby little kingdom, a cigarette dangling from his lips. I caught his eye as I passed, and he scowled, tossing his cigarette to the ground. "Ellen, I hope you aren't planning on leaving early today," he snapped, crossing his arms. "We're short on hands." I kept my tone steady, refusing to let his usual snide comments get to me. "I'll be here as long as I'm needed, Mr. Brown. No need to worry." He scoffed. "Good, because last time you clocked out a whole 5 minutes early." His eyes glinted with a challenge. I bit my tongue, nodding instead. 5 minutes. He would have docked my pay if he thought he could get away with it. As I headed toward the couch, I noticed the workers around me, their faces weary and shoulders slumped. Everyone felt the weight of Lennon's grip on us, and with each passing day, it only grew heavier. The morning dragged on as I filled bucket after bucket of milk, the work taking its toll on my hands. As I paused to stretch, I caught sight of Marge, my closest friend on the farm, hobbling over with a limp. "Marge, what happened?" "Oh, just a spill this morning," she whispered, wincing. "But Lennon won't let me off the clock. Says I'm too valuable." She attempted a bitter laugh, but it fell flat. "He'll work us to the bone if he can," I muttered. "It's not right." Marge sighed, a deep, defeated sound. "Not right, but it's how it is. What can we do?" I didn't have an answer. Instead, I gave her arm a comforting squeeze and went back to work, focusing on the rhythmic sloshing of milk in the bucket, trying to drown out the frustration gnawing at my chest. At noon, Lennon strode through the barn, barking about our sloppy pace, before casting a suspicious glance at my station. "Ellen, if you can't keep up, we'll find someone else who can." I clenched my fists, biting back a retort. Just then, Marge hobbled by, carrying more than her fair share of weight. Lennon noticed her limp but walked on, unconcerned. That sight sparked something in me, a small flame that refused to die. I couldn't let this go on forever. As I gathered my things that evening, a flicker of hope struck. What if someone could change things here? It was a fragile thought, a faint possibility, but it was there. I pushed it down, reminding myself of reality, but a part of me clung to that hope, even as I walked home to my drafty, crumbling house in the gathering dusk. It was a gray, unremarkable afternoon as I lugged my baskets of cottage cheese to the side of the road, setting up my usual makeshift stall by the fence. The clouds hung heavy, as if threatening to pour any moment, and my fingers tingled in the crisp air. Just another day of work, I thought, rubbing my hands together to keep warm. The rumble of a car broke the stillness, growing louder as it neared. I glanced up to see a sleek, black sedan pulling over in front of my stall. I stiffened, unused to customers arriving in anything so polished. The driver's door opened, and a tall figure stepped out, a man in a sharp suit, his movements deliberate as he walked toward me. For a second, I couldn't place him. Then, as he drew closer, I saw it, the familiar kindness in his eyes, the way he tilted his head. My breath hitched. "Omar?" I whispered, almost unable to believe it. A wide smile broke across his face. "Ellen, I never thought I'd find you here." For a moment I stood frozen, disbelief mingling with excitement. He'd grown from the boy I'd once known into a man who radiated confidence, yet that gentleness remained. Before I could gather my thoughts, another figure emerged from the passenger side, an older man with gray in his beard and a warmth in his gaze. "My father Hassan," Omar said, introducing him. "He's heard so much about you." I glanced between them, overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say. We've come to thank you," Omar said earnestly. "All these years I never forgot what you did for me." He gestured to my baskets, taking in the scene with a furrowed brow. "But I didn't realize things were still so hard for you." I managed a laugh, brushing off his concern. "Life's not easy for most folks around here, but I get by." Hassan stepped forward, his expression serious. "Ellen, we'd like to help you if you'll allow it. Please, let us give something back." I was about to shake my head, protest, when Omar continued, "We'd like to repair your home and help you get some more cows. That's the least we can do." My voice caught in my throat and tears came traitorously from my eyes. That's too much. Thank you. No one has ever done so much for me," and tears rushed from my eyes. "Not after what you did for me," Omar insisted, eyes shining with sincerity. "Please let us do this." As I looked at them, the reality of their offer sank in. I felt the weight of years lifting just a little, a warmth blooming in my chest. A chance for a new beginning. Could it really be happening? As the first light of dawn stretched across the sky, I spotted Omar and Hassan heading toward Alpine Meadow Farm. The air felt charged, whispers drifting among us workers as we caught sight of their serious expressions. I stood at a distance, my heart pounding as they strode purposefully toward the barn, where Lennon, our domineering manager, was overseeing the morning chores. Lennon noticed them, frowning as he crossed his arms. His voice cut through the quiet with unmistakable impatience. "What are you two doing here? This isn't some charity project." Omar stepped forward, his voice steady. "We're here because of the way you've been treating these workers. We've seen enough to know things need to change." Lennon laughed, harsh and mocking. "These people work for me and they know the rules. If they don't like it, they can leave. Simple as that." But Omar didn't flinch. "The rules here are unfair, and the conditions are worse. You're running this place like it's the Dark Ages, Lennon." Lennon's smile faded, his eyes narrowing into an unyielding glare. "Listen, kid," he said through gritted teeth, "this farm runs because I make it run. I don't need you or anyone else telling me how to do my job." Hassan stepped in, his voice calm yet firm. "We're not asking, Lennon. We're here to make sure these people are treated with dignity and respect, whether you like it or not." A murmur rippled through the crowd gathering around. I glanced at my fellow workers and saw a flicker of hope in their eyes, and despite myself, I felt a small smile tugging at my lips. But Lennon wasn't one to back down easily, his fists clenched, his face a shade darker with fury. "You think you're some kind of hero, coming here and trying to fix things? This is my farm." Omar took another step closer, his eyes fierce. If you refuse to change, we'll bring in an investigation. There are laws, Lennon, and you're not above them. The threat hung heavy in the air like a storm cloud. Lennon's face faltered for a split second, but he quickly forced a scowl. Fine, he spat, but don't expect me to make it easy. As Omar and Hasten turned to leave, I couldn't hold back. I stepped forward, letting the gratitude fill my eyes. Thank you. None of us thought anyone would ever stand up to him. Omar gave me a reassuring smile. This is only the beginning, Ellen. Things are going to change around here, one way or another. As they left the farm, Lennon stormed back into his office, slamming the door so hard the sound echoed across the yard. I thought that was the end of it, but I caught a glimpse of the sneer on his face as he muttered to himself, "We'll see who wins this little game." That night, the flames came. A fire broke out in the barn, its blaze painting the night sky with an eerie, fiery glow. I raced out with the other workers, grabbing buckets, shouting as we tried to contain it. Omar and Hassan, alerted by the noise, sprinted back to the farm. But by the time we got the flames under control, a third of the barn had been lost. As the smoke settled, I saw Omar's eyes lock onto Lennon, who was watching the destruction with a twisted, sick satisfaction. A chill ran down my spine as the realization hit us both. This was no accident. The morning after the fire, tension clung to Alpine Meadow Farm like the lingering smell of smoke. Small groups of workers huddled close, murmuring about Lennon's cruel smirk as the flames devoured the barn. Despite everything, Omar and Hassan were undeterred. I could see it in their eyes. They weren't about to let fear take over. They had one last plan. Omar called us all to meet beneath the massive oak near the charred barn ruins. As we gathered, he raised his voice, steady and filled with quiet strength. "What happened last night wasn't just a fire," he said, eyes sweeping over each of us. "It was a threat. A message that someone doesn't want change here. But I'm here to say we're not backing down." I glanced around, catching that same spark in my coworkers' faces, and I felt a surge of boldness. I stepped forward, chin up. If Lennon thinks he can scare us, he's wrong. We're ready to stand up for ourselves. Just then, Lennon stormed over, his face twisted with fury. "This is my farm," he hissed, barely controlling his voice. "And none of you will be working here much longer if you keep up this nonsense." Hassan moved to stand between us and Lennon, his voice calm but resolute. "Actually, Lennon, we've contacted the State Labor Board. They're very interested in an investigation." Lennon's eyes widened just for a moment before he forced a hollow laugh. "Good luck finding proof of anything," he spat, though I could hear the tremor in his voice. Without another word, he spun around and stomped back to his office, slamming the door so hard it echoed across the yard. I turned to Omar and Hassan, a cautious spark of hope warming my chest. "What happens now?" Omar smiled, a triumphant glint in his eyes. "Now we rebuild, and we do it right." Over the next week, Omar and Hassan organized repairs for the barn, hiring locals and paying fair wages to everyone who pitched in. As we worked side by side, the farm transformed, becoming a place of pride and optimism. I felt the weight of worry lift off my shoulders, even finding my small home seemed brighter in the afternoons. Then, a month later, a letter arrived, addressed to all of us workers. My hands shook as I opened it, reading aloud the official words. Lennon had been forced to sell the farm. New management would take over and all workers would retain their jobs, with benefits and fair treatment guaranteed. As I read the final line, a tear slipped down my cheek, and for the first time in years I felt truly secure. Omar met my eyes with a warm smile. "You made this possible, Ellen." But I knew it was Omar's kindness that had changed everything. 2 weeks later, Omar and Hassan arrived at my home, completing the repairs they promised. Then, with a grin, they led 2 beautiful cows around the corner, presenting them to me as a gift. The future felt brighter than I'd ever imagined.